Hello.
Hi there.
Hey.
I'm Jen.
Hi, Jen and Corey.
Yep.
Hi, Jesse here. Just a quick heads up. We put on our website. We put on the form, but we began recording our training sessions and consultations. It's helped out a lot with COVID and everything. So I just read over your consultation form. We got a 9-month-old or 10-month-old border collie Aussie mix.
Yep.
Seems kind of flighty with fireworks, and then was hurting some small children, and then you tried to, I guess, remove her or whatever, and then they became defensive and nipped at you, and then territorial over the yard or neighborhood, correct?
Yeah. So just to kind of clarify the situation around the bite too, that was actually in our fenced backyard on a leash. I was just taking her out for a potty, and she's had this very persistent defense and aggression towards the neighbors across the fence, who have been there since the day we brought her home and have always been very friendly to her, but she's just never really been able to stop that behavior. And so it was in that situation, she was really just barking and being aggressive, and I was trying to get her back with the leash and made the wrong move of reaching down in front of her to try and control her from the front. And she did really rip into me. I had about an inch long cut, bleeding and all of that. So that was a problem. And then, she was very kind of aggressive towards the little girl on the street the other day. And so just all combined, we were feeling like we are not sure what we need to do.
Okay. Explain the little girl situation. Is that a different one?
Yeah, it's a different situation. Yeah. So we had just come home from 2 weeks visiting my family. It was her first walk through the neighborhood back again. We had stopped to chat with an adult neighbor who she has met several times, and she was still being a little defensive towards this woman, even though she has warmed up to her in the past. But this particular time, I could tell by her ears and her tail and everything, she just wasn't feeling it. They happened to be babysitting for a little girl who's probably between 3 and 4, who came very quickly down the sidewalk, doggy! And so I just grabbed her, held onto her, but she was really fighting to get at this little girl. And then Corey, did you also want to explain the time at the dog park with the little boy?
Yeah, we were at a very large off-leash dog park, and she and I were just walking, kind of playing, and this kid kind of came around from a bunch of trees, so came into her vision, and he had a little backpack on, and he was running, and she started barking at him and running towards him, and I kind of got in between them, but she kept trying to get around me, and she didn't really want to get all the way to him, but she did want to sort of circle around him and bark at him.
And similar age, I think, like 3 to 4.
Probably 3, yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely trying to herd him, H-E-R-D.
Yeah, I know.
And I mean, I don't know if she would have bit him, because I kept trying to get in between him and her until I could grab her and walk off with her. But she seemed like she wanted to, I don't know, get close and then back up and get close and then back up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
how long have you had her for?
Since she was 8 weeks.
Okay, so you've had her for 7 months.
Yeah.
Yes.
When did this behavior start to really crop up?
Oh gosh, what do you
So
think?
she's only been going to off-leash dog parks for a month and a half, because Cook County just reopened. So she's just kind of getting used to him. In fact, I've had her the one in DuPage County twice, I think. And she's really, it took her a while to get used to being around the other dogs.
Because
I don't know. I would say the fence stuff with the neighbors has been like the most consistent, because she's had the most contact with them, and that's gotten progressively worse.
Yeah,
I would say. And
the leash stuff too. I mean, she if there's nothing around and she's on a leash walk, she's really gotten to the point where she's doing pretty well on the leash. But that's a little inconsistent. But it seems like for the most part, the dog park situation, with the exception of this unaccompanied small child, sounds like she's doing pretty well. She'll actually go up to other people. She'll go up to dogs. She's not being aggressive when she's off leash in an open, kind of unfamiliar space. Is that right, Corey?
Yeah,
You've taken her more.
that's really gotten better.
Okay.
I would say, like, last night she was actively playing with a husky that looked to be probably about her age, maybe a little older. She's actively playing with some other dogs there and playing with me, catching a Frisbee. And she'll very calmly approach other people, adults. She'll just kind of run up to them, sniff them, look at them, like get them to acknowledge her existence. Doesn't really let people pet her. And then she'll turn around and run off and go back and play with the other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
By contrast, our other border collie,
who has
was was aggressive with other dogs, just never ever had any interest in other dogs. All she wanted to do was play with me, play Frisbee, play ball. So it's kind of fun to see this one do both. She really wants to engage with me and play Frisbee, but she also like takes an interest in other dogs, sniffs. She was doing kind of with the husky, you know, the pounce down on, like, get low on your paws, and then kind of like dodge at each other.
Yeah.
And then she'll chase them, they'll chase her. So that's,
yeah. The other thing that
adjusted.
The other thing that came up when she was first at brand new puppy training, just puppy, whatever you call that, puppy school, was that the people that we went to, you know, it was a group class with usually 4 or 5 other similar age puppies, and she was very timid. She really wanted to hide a lot. They kind of put up a barrier for her, and they kind of pointed out to us, they said she is pretty shy for a puppy. And so that's kind of how she started out being. She was the smallest in her litter. But it's just, it's taken us a little by surprise, at least me, because where she was born was a house with 4 school-age children that all help raise the puppies until they go home. So she had lots of stimulation, lots of play, lots of people. And it's, I don't know how much of it is her personality, how much of it is the fact that we're all so poorly socialized right now that she hasn't had the experience of people coming in the front door and other people around and whatever. So
you said in that class, because they noticed she was timid, they put barriers up?
Just kind of a little like a gate, but that she could just run behind to feel safer and look out, like just a regular dog gate. So she wasn't closed off, but it was just a little safe space for her to feel more safe to kind of observe.
Because that actually reinforces the behavior.
Oh God.
Yeah. In my opinion, you know, I mean, you ask, you're gonna get different opinions, okay?
Yeah.
So,
sure.
You know, I don't really do many puppies. I have a puppy trainer now. But back when I used to have my puppy classes, it was not uncommon to get at least one puppy in the class that would hide behind the owner, hide underneath the chair. And I would tell the owner, you know, take your puppy and plant them out in front of you. And you'd see the puppy trying to run back to the owner. And I'd say, just hold them there. And, you know, eventually they would stop, and you would see them panting and salivating. Their eyes would be really big. And it looked really bad, right? And I told the owners, we have facing fear and we have practicing fear, okay? Practicing fear is behind the stool, underneath the feet, behind the owner, okay? Facing fear is being planted. Either way, the dog's scared, right? Either way. But one will help the dog progress. The other will reinforce the fearful behavior. And by the second, maybe third class, those puppies would be playing, because we didn't, you know, in the animal world, there's actually a video of this on YouTube. I have it in a collection where it's a litter of puppies, and I believe it's a golden retriever or a cream retriever, something like that. And one of the puppies is being antisocial and is hiding from the group. And you see the mom come and pick up the puppy and plant them in the middle of all the other puppies, and just keeps harassing the puppy and keeps putting it back and keeps putting it back. And the puppy's yipping and crying and rolling and all that stuff. And eventually the puppy just settles. And then the mom walks away, right? Because she was going, you're not going to be antisocial. You're gonna handle this. There's nothing to be scared of, right? But to the humans, because we're emotional, when we see that and you see that response from your puppy, you think, oh no, protect, you know, remove, and it's completely, it's against how they actually handle things. Okay. Yeah. Now it's not like that one thing defined everything else. Sure. You said it, you know, you got the puppy at 8 weeks. It was already timid. This is genetics. Okay. And in genetics, of course, or just when we raise an animal, we have nature versus nurture. And there's no real concrete answer ever. I've had people do everything by the book, positive reinforcement, you know, tons of socialization, all that stuff, but the dog still becomes aggressive. Okay. It is what it is. So I don't ever worry about that stuff in terms of, did we make this worse? Obviously, COVID hasn't helped anybody. Especially those that got puppies. There's a lot of dogs with separation anxiety or that are going to have separation anxiety because of it. A lot of puppies that are antisocial because they were not exposed to other dogs, things like that, right? So it's kind of like, okay, well, this is where we're at. How do we handle it going forward? Is how I kind of think of it, okay? So this is a lot of good information. I think you have a couple of things. I think you have a mixture of both the dogs' breeds. You have 2 herding breeds, but then you also have a timid dog. And I believe you have a timid dog that's becoming timid nervous, that's becoming a little bit of a bully in the sense of like self-defense. I can't say 100% for sure, right? But like the increasing territorialness over the home or the fenced yard, is more so being fueled because of that timid nervousness, okay? Think of it as like, I know you said, she's seen the neighbors since she was a puppy growing up, but for whatever reason, it's seemingly gotten worse, okay? And it's because as she matures, the world starts to become a bit more serious to her, okay? So you got to think dogs are very black and white. They're very primal. So you have your neighbor, they have their kids, you have your other neighbor, they don't have kids, and you know them for however long, right? And if one neighbor moves out and another neighbor moves in, you're like, okay, new neighbor, right? But for your dog, even though she's seen them so many times, your territory is your territory, okay? So it's like, hey, I don't like you getting too close to us, so I'm gonna bark along this fence to keep you at bay, right? And if you keep coming, or if you have any kind of energy like, hey, right, like the kids do, it's gonna piss her off even more because she doesn't even know what hey means. She's just like, you're projecting energy at me, so now I'm gonna become more threatening. Like, leave us alone, right? So if the intensity starts to escalate, it doesn't so much mean that she's a more so aggressive dog. To me, it's really saying that she's so insecure that she's having to really bluff, and try to put out as much threat as possible to say, like, leave our fence alone, okay? What I really care about is when people come into the property. Okay, that's what I would care about. I'm not saying that you can't stop the barking along the fence, but because I see things as dogs, things that I don't pass it as judgment on the dog. I get some clients that say, like, my dog shouldn't be barking at kids from the fence and all that. I'm like, I get it, but to your dog, everybody is a potential threat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're this big, doesn't matter if they're this big, doesn't matter if it's a cat or a dog, like everybody is a threat. And the dog, their job is to protect the home and the family. That's part of their instinct because they're driven by the survive and replicate. That's their genetic code, survive and replicate, okay? So if they allow any potential threats through, that potentially puts the life of the family or the pack at risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So the issue is, let's say we have a stable dog who's friendly. They do the same stuff, they bark, right? But then the person comes over and they're like, oh, hey, I like people.
Yeah.
Like, because they're sociable. In your case, you have a timid, insecure, nervous dog. So that gets intertwined with the territorial behavior. And then that's where the intensity and like the craziness comes from. And when you try to redirect her and you try to pull her away, she was so caught up in the moment, she got you pretty good. It happens. That's what we call redirected aggression.
Yeah.
But that's why I always tell everybody, and going forward, don't ever try to, unless you absolutely have to, physically remove your dog. When I go into a thing like that, like I already go into it knowing like I might get bit and I'm already maneuvering in a way that lessens that chance, So that to me isn't too much out the ordinary. The kid reactivity that you're seeing is most likely due to the nervousness and just real lack of structure, okay? And I'll talk more about that as we go along. The dog park stuff, like slowly taking time to warm up, and all that. So the reason why that's easier is because that's more of a community setting, right? It's not your territory.
And I wondered, not to cut you off, I'm sorry. I wondered too, because what she and I have in common is we both tend to like to be in control. And it feels like like when she's on her leash and things like that, she's not in control. And I wondered how much she might, you know, in the dog park situation, it's kind of like, oh, like she has the freedom to go where she wants to go. Nothing is restraining her. She's not being told. It's her like freedom to kind of approach as she's comfortable. Has that anything to do with it, or am I projecting humanity onto her?
You're close, but you're reading it like a human though.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can't do what she, how do you say, yes and no. It's because on a leash, you've removed flight response.
Mm.
We have 4 responses to a stressor: fight, flight, avoidance, submission. Okay. So if she's on a leash, we remove flight. Avoidance would be, oh, there's a kid, I'm going to just look this way and pretend it's not there. Submission would be just accepting. So that really just leaves fight. Okay. If I can't run away from you, then I'm going to confront you. Okay. At the dog park, one, we remove the leash. So now there is flight response, but also we want to look at the context. You know, I've had a lot of people who will say, my dog is reactive on leash, but off leash, they're completely friendly. Why? I'm like, it could be they're throwing a tantrum like a kid, like I want to play with that dog, and it's interpreted as aggression, right? Because it's barking, but it's not, it's just a tantrum. Or there are dogs that don't like not having a flight response, and then once they have that response, it makes them feel safe because they're like, in the case I need to get away, I can.
That makes sense.
The other part of it is just formal training. Typically, like, do you walk around a harness or anything?
No, just a regular leash and collar. We did pick up a martingale collar that we haven't tried yet, just to see if that helped at all. But she pulls so hard when she pulls, I'm not sure how much deterrent that is.
That's part of the problem as well.
Okay.
Okay. So dogs have a thing called opposition reflex. It means when they feel pressure, they go against it. Okay. So if your dog pulls forward, most people pull backwards. So you're telling the dog, pull. Okay. So if they pull right, you pull, I'm sorry, if you pull left, they pull right, you pull right, they pull left, you pull back, they pull forward, like all that, right? So we actually need to teach her not to do that. Okay. Because when you're pulling back, you're creating agitation and frustration. So with a lot of my dog reactive cases, you know, dog owners typically, when they have their puppies, will get a harness to remove any pressure on the throat because of the trachea, right? So I get that. But then the problem that happens is they're walking their puppy and they see another dog, and maybe they'll pull their puppy back because they don't want them to annoy the other dog, right? And then the puppy's trying to get at them, and it's starting to get frustrating because the puppy can't greet the dog and it just wants to say hi, right? So they keep doing that every time they see a dog. And eventually, as the puppy matures, the brain starts to learn every time we see a dog, negative tension kicks in, right? And it starts to associate the tension to dogs, and then we start to create distrust. So then it becomes from complete friendliness to frustration to agitation to aggressive responses, okay? And I had a lady we did a consultation with like a month ago, and she was like, oh, so that's what I did. Because she's like, that's exactly what happened with my pit. She was completely friendly as a puppy, put her on a harness, and over the course of time, I just noticed she got more and more aggressive as we walked. And I said, that's why. Okay. So in your case, you have a flat collar, but it's the same concept of when she pulls forward, it's adding agitation. And then it's kind of like maybe if you've seen a movie when there's like a fight and somebody tries to pull them away from the fight and it just like amps up the person more. Yeah. It's the same concept.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else about Dinah that I should know?
I mean, her like nervousness response at the dog park the first couple times was trying to jump up and get me to hold her. So I kind of did what you were talking about with the, you know, kept putting her, kept putting her back down, just to let her kind of get over it. And she did pretty quickly. Now she, you know, she really doesn't try that anymore. It's usually like just right when we enter the park if there's dogs milling around the gate, but she kind of got over that pretty quickly. And then the only other, like, she's met my parents once and she's met Jen's parents a couple times, and that was really the problem because she barked at them at first, which my dad was afraid of, but he's a different story. My mom was really good about it. She just kind of stood there quietly waiting for the dog to sort of get over the barking, see that she wasn't going to move or run away from her or lean down and pet her or anything. And just, my mom sort of waited her out and she stopped barking. She went up, she sniffed her feet, you know, and then eventually my mom was petting her, and it took all of 5 or 6 minutes for their whole relationship to go from initial meeting with the barking to my mom calmly waiting it out to now the dog loves her.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I can only pull that off with her because my mom's really good with that stuff. And I think your parents are pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good actually story to tell. So my parents had met her at 10 weeks old. My parents live out of state. We visited when she was 10 weeks old for Christmas. And then she hadn't seen them again until a couple weeks ago. We went and visited. And so similar, we came to their house, you know, had her kind of meet them on the front step, and she's barking, and she's a little bit more aggressive towards men. And again, maybe that's just like a normal thing because she had boys and an adult man around her when she was quite young. So she warmed up to my mom faster, but you know, the first visit, real timid, real nervous, checking everything out in the house. When she was used to them being around, it was kind of run the perimeter, like check everything out. And by the second visit, it was better. By the third visit, she went up to them looking for affection. So she definitely does come around. I think my biggest concerns are, you know, we're on a family block. We don't have children. Our immediate neighbors don't, but there are plenty of kids on the block. You know, we'd like to have her, you know, if any of the kids, there's a teenager who does a dog walking business, you know, we'd like to have her be able to engage. And after she really went after me the one day, I just thought, oh my God, like if that happened to somebody else, I would just die. So, yeah, that's it. That's more about me than her, but.
So for the men thing, that's not uncommon.
Okay.
Because men tend to give off a more threatening presence.
Yeah.
In going back actually to earlier when you said she was raised with a family that had a bunch of kids and they were handled a lot, right? It doesn't matter going forward. So that's like that nature versus nurture thing, right? Now, science and like logic would say if she stayed with that family, she'd most likely, or not to say most likely, but she'd more likely be fine with kids because it was continuous exposure, right? But then she went into a home with no kids, and then it was no kids for a while, correct? Until like recently. Yeah. Okay. So then that to me doesn't strike me as surprising. The other thing is that like at 6 months and at a year, puppies have a very how do I explain? A very kind of deep psychological shift, okay? So, or personality shift. So I've had plenty of people whose puppies were great, and then once they hit 6 months, they just like 180, and all of a sudden, like anybody that came over, they were aggressive with, okay? But anybody they met before 6 months is okay, okay? It's super common. Same thing with at a year. That's a little bit less common. It's more so around 6 months, but a year is another time when that can happen. Okay. And sometimes it's involved around an incident, you know, where the puppy was happy-go-lucky, everything was great, but then maybe got attacked by a dog at the dog park, and then the next day, dog aggressive. Okay, so like there's, you know, I tell people don't worry about it because life's gonna throw stuff at you, and it's just kind of like, all right, well, we did everything perfectly, and then life screwed it up for us, right? So when it comes to how we go about addressing this, did you guys happen to do any research on me and like our methods and stuff?
A little bit, not super extensive, but yeah, I went through the different kind of types of packages or however you label them that address the kind of different issues and stuff.
Sure. So your case is your concern is more so behavioral.
Yeah.
Right. So think of obedience and behavior as two different things. Think of obedience as education and think of behavior as morality.
Totally.
Okay.
That's what we said the other day. We said she's a pretty obedient dog. It's just, it's really, her reactions to the world and stuff.
Right. So like obedience, and it depends on how you go about it. And I'm going to explain how this stuff works is, you know, sit, stay, come has nothing to do with her liking kids. Right. But when we do behavioral work, there's a couple of things here. One is we need formal obedience where she's not pulling on that leash. Okay, so my style of obedience is if I take 1 step, the dog takes 1 step. If I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. When I stop, the dog automatically sits. Okay, I don't care what the environment is. and I want a completely slack leash when we're doing this. I don't hold the leash tight, okay?
Nice.
So when I have that level of focus, it's a very high level of discipline. And it sounds complicated, but it's not. Okay, it's very simple to teach. It just takes work. The tool that I use and the tool that I'm known for, and all the dogs that I train after 6 months, after their 6 months, is e-collar. Okay, are you guys familiar with e-collar?
I am. I think, are you talking the little tiny shock?
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, I've had a demonstration of it before.
Okay, so how long ago was that demonstration?
Oh, it was 7, 8 years probably.
Okay, training's come a long way. I mean, that's when things started to change within the training world.
It was like brand new, I think, that when I went to this presentation.
Okay, so when it comes to e-collar, it's more commonly known as what people call the shock collar, right? Because, you know, go back 20, 30 years when they first came out, you had 5 levels, okay? Now we have 127 levels. The difference is 5 and 127 are the same, but I have 122 more breaks. Okay, so people tend to think 122 more. And I go, no, it's the same power, it's the same output, but you have much more, divisions.
Like nuance, yeah.
Exactly. And they actually use this technology on humans. Have you guys ever been to a physical therapist or a chiropractor?
A little bit of physical therapy, yeah.
Okay. Have you ever had the machine, the muscle stimulator?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's an e-collar.
Okay. That's
Okay.
a good comparison.
Yes, it's an e-collar. It's a muscle stimulator. Okay. So people tend to think it's electricity. Okay. So I tell them it's electric, but not electricity. It's not a taser. It's not like sticking your finger in an outlet. You know, it's not like being electrocuted. It's a small electric current that just where it makes contact, it'll only stimulate that muscle. Okay. So if they put the machine here, you're not going to feel anything over here, right? It's all going to be over here. It's the same thing for the e-collar. Okay. So the reason why I use this tool is because for me, it's the best training tool. Again, almost every dog that I've trained at 6 months and up in the last 10 years is on e-collar. Okay. Most people or most trainers look at it as the last resort. Okay. It's because they don't understand it correctly. They don't understand how to apply it correctly. Okay. For me, it's the first resort because right off the bat, I get off leash control. So if the dog runs away, I can get the dog back, no problem. So like you said, fireworks, correct?
Yeah,
It's a very common thing. We can make her come back if that should happen because we have a means of control, okay? When it comes to obedience, I can get very reliable obedience without even having to touch the dog because of the e-collar, okay? So in one of the notes, I saw that you said, you know, training in the neighborhood and stuff like that because that's where there's all the stimuli, right? It's all the distraction. And most trainers, when they start training, they put you in a very quiet room or it's a very secluded room. Maybe you got a couple other dogs, right? And it doesn't transfer to the real world. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. We've tried I tried a private lesson several weeks back and it was just in this small room and like the demo went great. And I'm just like, but what do I do with this at home?
Right. And that's something I learned years ago is that people had a hard time transferring one, how do I use this in life? But then 2, just the difference between being in a small confined room to being out in the world is obviously worlds apart, right?
Right, yeah.
So we train at Oz Park. Are you familiar with Oz Park?
Do you know it, Corey? Yeah. I don't remember.
It's
in Lakeview.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
One of my clients told me recently that it was voted the most voted like the most busiest dog park in Chicago. You got kids, you got rollerbladers, you got skateboarders, you got bikers, you got off-leash dogs, you got baseball games, you got people doing birthday parties and barbecues. It's crazy busy. That's where we train, okay? And we're getting the results because of the e-collar, okay? And also
the guy who gave me the demo of the e-collar, or us, he described it as like a way to tap your dog on the shoulder. You're not shocking the dog. It's like it's just a way to get their attention, like you would tap somebody on the shoulder to get their attention. And then he also put it on me and showed me what it feels like. Yeah, we were living in the same building at the time.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So Yeah, so e-collar, most people's interpretation is punisher, okay? And as that gentleman put it, or trainer put it, it's communicator, okay? Now, when we do e-collar work, this is where I'm different than other trainers, okay? Not many, there's probably like 15, maybe 20 people in the world that I know of that train the way that I do, because it's all through one man's method who is in Miami, Florida. Okay, this is his way of teaching, and most trainers stress what they call low-level e-collar. Okay, so again, my collar goes to 127, and what that means is they'll say like, we'll train your dog on a 3. So 3 out of 127 obviously is just super low, right? But it's not realistic. 3. So what happens is the dog perceives the 3, but doesn't respect the 3. So then you're constantly having to go from low to high to correct things.
That makes sense.
Okay. And what we do is we find a number right in the middle. So we have connection level, working level, connection level, perception level, working level. Okay. Connection is when you see the twitch, but like if the dog, if Dinah's staring at a kid and you see this happening, she's completely unfazed. Okay. Like you see the twitch, but she just did not care about it. Then we have perception, when you see the twitch and then the dog kind of looks around like, what's that? You know, kind of like a little fly buzzing. And then working level is, whoa, what's going on here, right? There's more concern. And we train with working level, as I put it, okay? Because that's what allows us to right off the bat start getting reliable obedience no matter what the context is, okay? So at Oz Park, the number might be 45. Okay, but then when you go to your neighborhood, if there's less going on, it might be 25, because you're accommodating for the environment. Does that make sense? If there's a less stimulating environment, you'd be lower. Yeah. So I don't know what the number is going to be. Dinah knows. Okay, that's what we figure out during the training sessions and stuff like that. So in terms of how I would approach a case like this, okay, because I know we want to work with the kid thing and all that stuff. The fence reactivity should technically be the easiest. So you learn firsthand, if you do something that Dinah does not want you to do, which is restrain her, what may she do?
What may she do? She wiggles, she bites, she barks,
right?
Worm, all of it. Yeah.
Right. So she might bite, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how dogs communicate with each other. So if we took Dinah to the off-leash dog park and maybe she's annoying one particular dog, they would bite her to tell her, leave me alone, stop that. Whether or not she respects that is a different, conversation. But the idea here is when we come to stop behaviors, it's actually fairly simple. It's all about consequence. Okay, so, but you have 2 parts here. The fence reactivity stuff is simply stop that, and then we apply an aversive. Okay, so e-collar is both an aversive and a teaching tool. Okay, so I can use it to train a dog to be completely off-leash obedient, heel, stay, sit, down, come, place, whatever. And I can also use it to say, don't do that. Okay, and we don't need to have the dog on a leash because it's by the control of the remote. Okay, now when we go to stop a behavior, this is where things get tricky. Okay. Again, I don't know what Dinah may need. Dinah knows that, right? So she could be super sensitive and she's throwing up the biggest fit at the fence and you're at 10 and you go, stop that, tap, tap, and she stops. And she walks away and she's calm and she's relaxed. Perfect, right? Or she might be so intense that you could be as high as 127 before she goes, fine, I'll stop barking now, okay? When it comes to that stuff, I always tell people, you have to be willing to go as far as needed in order to get the result. Okay, that's what makes me an effective trainer. Is when I come in, I go, what's the problem? Okay, well, just let me do what I got to do. We always start low. Always. Unless there's an absolute emergency, we always start low. We work our way up. That's what they do with humans, right? They put the thing on you. They say, tell us when it becomes too much. They start to raise the intensity. You say, oh, that's uncomfortable. They say, okay. They dip it down. They let it do its work, right? It's very similar to the dog, right? We're controlling it. We start low. She's barking at the fence. I'm raising it 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. She stops barking, she walks away. Great, 80, right? But
Okay.
what tells me that was the correct number is her response.
Yeah.
Okay. So stopping things like that is fairly easy because it's just don't do that. Okay. The obedience stuff is easy because it's just mechanical responses. Put your butt down when I say sit. Lay down when I say down. Walk next to me when I say heel. Come to me when I call you, right?
Yeah.
The trickiest part out of all this is if she is shy or not very fond of kids, that's a kind of like emotional thing in the certain sense of like, I don't like kids, so now we have to try to make her like kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
That's a little bit more tricky. So the way we approach things like this is the first thing we cover is the leash walking exercise, okay, which is heel. That teaches you how to use the collar. That teaches Dinah how the collar works, how it turns on, how it turns off, okay? If she is a timid, flighty, nervous type dog, we might see her look more timid, flighty, or nervous during the training session. Okay, I actually just started the dog yesterday, similar to your case, just not as intense in terms of the fence reactivity. She actually kind of flipped out on me here. You can see here.
Yeah.
And then over here, like all these scratches, right?
Wow.
Because I went to fix her collar and she flipped out because I was in her personal space. So you see her bucking around and shrieking, and I'm just holding on to her and I'm very calm. And eventually she settles and lets me do what I need to do. And then I coach the owner. Okay.
Yeah.
And during the training session, she kept trying to run away from the owner because of the e-collar. But we worked through it. And by the end of the session, she was walking right next to the owner. Okay. So the reason why things seemingly look worse is because the e-collar is a stressor.
Yeah.
Okay. Your dog's stress response is flight or nervousness. Okay. So it would make sense that if you're applying a stressor, that it's going to increase that flighty, nervous behavior. But we have to teach the dog that this isn't the appropriate response. The appropriate response is to follow and to move into the exercise. Okay.
Yeah.
Once the dog learns that, then they go, oh, that's not too bad. Okay.
And it seems like similar to what you were saying about putting the puppy back in the middle of the room repeatedly. It's just a repeated, like, nope, this is how you're going to be fine. This is the correct thing. So,
Correct.
yeah.
And there's no yelling, there's no screaming, there's no yanking and all that stuff. It's all done through the remote collar. Okay.
That might be my fear and stress response to the dog. So that's not helping.
That's because you're frustrated.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to control the situation, but what you've done so far, where you've been taught, just hasn't worked quite yet, right?
Yeah.
E-collar removes a lot of that frustration because it's at the press of a button.
Yeah.
It's very simple. The exercises are very simple. What would make it more complicated is the dog's behavior. Okay. But what makes, one thing I've learned is that with people, like when I used to do positive only, which was food, this was like years and years ago.
Yeah.
People would come back like, this shit don't work. You know,
Yeah.
they're like the dog doesn't want the treat. But I had to use that method because that was not my business. That was another business, you know?
Yeah.
And I kept, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I keep reading a lot about that. And that's, you know, like we're on a Facebook group called, you know, Aussie's doing things and just stuff like that. And everybody's like positive only. I'm like, how do I positive only my dog away from the fence when she's snarling and resisting me? I'm like, I don't know what the positive is that's going to get her to stop doing that. And I think that's where Corey and I, that's where we kind of went like, you know, he raised our last dog from a puppy, the Border Collie before, and, you know, did an amazing job with her. And she just had a little bit different nature. And like this one, we kind of went, okay, we don't know what to do. So anyway, I don't mean to direct conversation, but
I like these moments because like, you know, like it's nice to see that there's people out there that have common sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you would be surprised. I had one client like 8 years ago who spent like 10 grand on all these positive reinforcement trainers, right? And they kept telling him the same stuff. And finally he stumbled on me. So I come in and they told him his dog was aggressive. And I said, your dog's not aggressive. I was the only trainer that told him his dog was not aggressive. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because I have a sleeve that dogs can bite, you know, if they're,
oh yeah.
And I go, look, and I touched the dog and the dog shut up.
Yeah.
Like he was barking, but when I went to touch him, the dog just went very awkwardly and sat there. And I'm like, if your dog was aggressive, your dog would be biting that. And he's like, holy crap, right? So then I'm like, 6 classes, it'll be about $1,000 all in. And he was like over his head. He's like, you're kidding me. He's like, no way. He's like, I was like, I tell you what, I was like, if I don't get this done within a couple of classes, I'll give you your money back. So he's like, sure. A couple of classes later, no problem. So he was just like, it's crazy. I'm like, yeah, I was like, I understand where he's coming from. He was a good person. He wanted to get it done with positive. It made him feel good to think he'd get it done with positive. Yeah. But I told him, you have a dog and dogs bite each other. He needs discipline.
And she has done great with with the obedience things. Positive is great. She has learned on our walks that we've used the term wait to stop before crossing a street, and wait means to sit down at the crossing. And she's to the point where most of the time, if you just stop at the curb, she'll just sit. I mean, she's really, and that's just all treats and positive reinforcement. So she's whip smart. So, she learned to shake in an hour.
Yeah.
Like that. So that stuff is fine, but.
Positive reinforcement is great for things you want to see again.
Yeah.
Real simple mechanical things, but when it comes out to the real world where there's stressors and there's other stimuli and distractions, that's where it falls short,
Yeah.
So,
sure.
So the first thing we would do here is get her to walk my style, right? So like right now, you said you taught her weight and all that stuff. Excuse me. I can teach that with e-collar, no words, within like 15 minutes.
Cool.
Okay. Day one, right off the bat. Doesn't take days. It's super simple. Okay. That's typically 2 classes. I split heal into 2 parts. There's teaching the dog, and then there's teaching the human, like the nuances of movements.
Yeah.
And then after that, we would start going into behavior realm. In your case, okay? So the way I approach training is I go, okay, what's going on with the dog? All right, what do you need? What do you want? Okay, and then I have my assessment of what I think you need, okay? So in your case, if all you're really caring about is behavioral stuff, okay, it would really just be the leash walking. That's 2 classes, and then I start giving you exercises for socializing, okay? And stopping things. The other thing, before I forget, would actually be recall. Because of
Yeah.
So come when called and heal are the 2 absolutely necessary commands that a dog should know. Okay, because if she runs away, you need to know you can make her come back.
Yeah, and that's another fear. I mean, she'll come when she feels like it. If she's like at the dog park and out of her element, she'll come when she hears come. But
so
in the house, it's kind of like, screw you.
So we need that to be reliable, okay? Recall is typically 2 classes in itself. Recall does tend to take people the longest because it requires you to go somewhere, right? Unless you live conveniently in front of a open space where you can practice all the time, it takes longer for people, okay? So I try to teach it as soon as possible, and then the exercise is simple, then it's just a matter of time and repetition to get it to the degree that we need it to, okay? The behavioral stuff, so I know we have the fence barking, whatever. What about with like people coming into the home?
She's had so little experience with that. I mean, because it's been months and months since anybody walked in the front door. We did have, when she was quite small, we had workers coming in and out, and all men. And she, with one guy in particular, really started to like him. But even after weeks of him coming into the house, she would still have days where she was, defensive and scared of him. So that's probably the best example, was when we had the workers coming. Yeah,
so that's the nervousness. So what happens is, when I have a client who says, my friend has come over 100 times and it's kind of hit or miss, that the dog will warm up to him. And I'll tell him it's because typically before the coming person comes in, there's a knock or doorbell that triggers the dog. Okay, now the dog's suspicious and going, who's behind the door? But then if the dog has issues, again, that kicks into play. So it depends on, is it a good day or a bad day, right? Then the guest comes in. So if the dog's having a bad day, they're staying suspicious. They're not opening up to the fact of, I've seen you 100 times, because their brain is still stuck on that nervous kind of territorial state. Okay. So I have an exercise to address that. It's not uncommon. So like most dogs, like I said, somebody would knock, they bark, but when you open the door, they're like, oh, I love people. Right? So they just barked because they didn't know what was behind the door.
Yeah, that's how our last dog was.
They're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a person. I like you. Hey, how you doing? Right? but you have a nervous, timid dog. And that's why, you know, and then plus COVID and all that stuff. So not necessarily at least right now, depending on if you guys are quarantining it or not, like the biggest concern. But obviously when things start to go back to normal and you want to have guests come over, something that you can always address that later as well. Because I will say it would be kind of pointless if we do the exercise and then you don't have anybody over for 6 months.
Yeah.
You're gonna forget it,
Makes sense.
or you know, you're not going to use it, right? So I would just wait till the day comes. The kid thing. So the reactivity should actually be the first thing that goes. Okay, the reactivity towards kids. So when it comes to reactivity, there's a spectrum. Human reactivity is almost always the first thing that goes away. Okay. Then other dogs, like calm dogs, puppy type, excited energy, other reactive dogs or dogs behind fences, or like when you turn the corner and there's a dog, are end of spectrum. Okay, that's typically how it progresses. And you just have the kid reactivity, correct? A dog's
I guess on walks, it seems like she's reactive to dogs some. It's not with aggression. It's more interest or a little bit of avoidance.
Sure.
Like because I didn't know what we were supposed to do, really. There were times when I'll just pull her off into the parking grass and just wait, and dogs can pass by, and she'll pull a little or something like that, but it's not as bad as with humans or especially kids.
Okay. It's either frustration, just because she just wants to check out what's going on. So that I would, you know, assume that would go away fairly quickly with the human stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what it is, because, I mean, for the past 4 months, I've crossed the street every time I've encountered another person on the sidewalk. So she's never really gotten near people. But even like last night at the dog park, she will run up to other humans and sniff them and like look to be acknowledged, and then, you know, turn around and walk off. She doesn't really let people pet her, as far as I can tell.
Right.
But, you know, I think it is like the lack of ability to make full contact with people. Frankly, I kind of think that's what's driving her nuts with our neighbors, is them being right there, but she can't like confirm their goodness.
So
by interacting with them.
So much the confirming the goodness, it's a tricky one, because if because you want to think your territory.
Yeah.
Okay. That like they could come over, reach over with the treat, and she might say, "Screw your treat," bam, right?
Yeah.
Do not cross her territory. Now, in her world, that is correct. Okay. In our world, it's incorrect. Okay, because you know it's your neighbor, and we have, you know, there's laws and stuff. So like, just that you're aware, if your dog is off leash within your yard and bites someone, for reaching over or whatever, you're liable.
Yeah, I'd actually never encouraged them to reach over, because I had that sense that she might see that as encroaching on her place.
Always assume. I always tell people, assume things with caution. Okay, because people tend to be unassuming. Right? They see all these Instagram posts of cute dogs smiling, and they think like it's all about happiness and joy with dogs. But in the reality of life, no, it's not. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you can't have guests come over and stuff. It's just someone has to communicate to her that she just does not need to be territorial, that you are in fact in charge, and then we can work on the socialization stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So the in-home stuff, again, I wouldn't stress it too much at the time being, but I will help you. I can help you with like things that are more realistic, like, you know, the kids in the neighborhood, stuff like that. The way we would approach the kid thing, so we would do, most likely we'd start with the 2 leash walking exercises. And I want to see like you're my report card, and you might say, "Hey, Jesse, man, that one class, we walked past the owners and their kids, no barking." Like, she's not barking, she's not lunging. I'm like, awesome. The discipline did its work, right? Then I teach you part 2. And then on class 3, I would start working with you on how we're going to introduce her to kids, and then see where is she at. Okay. Now, if we want to do kid to dog introduction, you want to muzzle train. Okay. And I would start that process today, whether or not you train with me or another trainer, you start that process today. Because It's going to make you feel better, for one, okay? Even though we don't know what's going to happen, right? But I know my clients, they're going to be in the back of their head like, but what happens if they bite, Jesse? And then they start getting all anxious. It's normal, right? So we would want to have that muzzle on, because then it makes you feel better. You're like, even if she tries something, that, you know, the risk of a bite actually happen is reduced greatly. It can happen like if a finger slides through the muzzle or something, obviously, but I do a lot of things to prevent that. It helps your neighbors and their kids feel better too, okay?
Yeah.
Now, in my experience, when it comes to dogs, more often than not, people do want to help, okay? And I've had dogs in the past that never bit anybody, okay? But just needed a little bit of socialization, and we didn't muzzle them. And when we would ask people to pet the dog, they would look at us like, why? We're like, oh, we need to socialize the dog. She's never bitten anybody. They're like, no, I'm okay, right? Because there was no muzzle, even though the dog never bit anybody. And I've had dogs that really nailed people that were muzzled, and we will tell them, and they'll be like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. They put the dog. Okay, so it'll help everybody feel more relaxed. And if something happens, let's say she does try it, because now we're pressing threshold. Walking past and letting kids walk past is no big deal. Kids coming into personal space is where we're going to see the stress levels really rise, and then see what is she really about. Okay. If she tries something, we correct it. You don't do that, and we repeat. That's how we teach these things. Okay. Now, what's the word? With great reward comes great risk. I don't know if I'm phrasing that correctly or not, but you're going to be putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, right? Because you're trying to help her open up the kids. We do attach positive there, so we have negative and positive. If you try to bite or if you growl or something, correction. And then I tie something good to the kids, like cheese, turkey, sausage, you know, whatever, really good stuff that she'd only get with kids, okay, to see what will happen here, okay? We cannot make her like kids, realistically speaking, okay? I have exercises, and she might turn around and go like, wow, kids are great, you know, like if I do this, something bad happens, but if I don't do anything and they give me treats and all that stuff, great, I'm friendly with kids, right? But I always tell people, don't get complacent, because she might be good with kids until a kid pulls her ear. Yeah. Right.
And there aren't enough like super young kids in our life, nor will there probably be, that you know, if it comes down to it and she's not going to like them, as long as she can kind of behave, then it's easy enough not to have her in that situation.
Sure.
That's okay. Like, that's not gonna, I don't see that as being any big thing in our life,
okay,
you know, as a problem or anything.
Realistically speaking, what I always push for is coexistence. So like, I'm a social person, but when I go to Target, I don't say hi to everybody. You know, but people expect that of their dogs. Okay. So it's, if I don't, not everybody likes me, and I don't like everybody that I meet, it's fine, but we're not jerks about it, you know, in most cases.
You don't bite people at Target routinely.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So what I want is kids can walk past, run past, skateboard past, no reactivity. She can walk past, no reactivity, right? But if a kid runs up to her like, dog, right? I would expect to see a reaction. Now, we can absolutely stop it, but that's where owner steps in and goes, no, like, you don't do that to this dog, right?
Which is exactly what we did the other day. So
good. And even with our other one, which was like the perfectly behaved dog, the kids thing was still always made me nervous, because kids are just so unpredictable in what they're going to do to a dog.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, who pays for it is the kid and the dog. You know, if something does happen. And just take this with you, you know, as a bit of FYI, is if you tell the child no and they throw a fit or whatever, you've taught that kid a lesson, in the sense of hopefully they don't go approaching the next dog the same way. Because I've had instances where a kid just ran up to a dog and then got bit in the face. You know, and I was like, well, the kid ran up, no, you know, the parents didn't teach any inhibition, in the sense of you treat animals with respect, right? So I do stress that out a lot when it comes to my clients and their kids. So I'll tell them, like, this sounds really weird, but Don't try to force the Instagram, get a lot of likes, baby with the dog scenario, because if something happens, it's going to be to the baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have multiple families who've had kids throughout the years who had dogs that didn't like kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, hey, you're actually more likely, your dog's more likely to like your own kid. It'll just take longer because they're around each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just coexistence for the first 2 to 3 years until the child learns the concept of gentle. They're just
Mm-hmm.
coexisting with each other. And by that point, the dog's just like, oh, you're just a part of the family now,
Yeah.
so that when we do introduce them, there's no problem at that point. So, but yeah, we could definitely tackle that. It's an easy exercise. It's just, I think, emotionally difficult for people just because of the stress that it brings.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the way we approach it is to reduce the exposure to risk as much as possible. Okay.
Yeah.
So that one's kind of play it by ear. Other than that, like I would, from what you've told me, what I think you need is simply a 6-week course. I know it sounds super short, but e-collar is very effective. Okay. I would suspect 2 for leash walking. That's our groundwork for the kid stuff. We see how does it work. Okay. Let's say for whatever reason, we're still getting reactivity towards kids. I want to know what the threshold is. How far are those kids from you when this is happening? How high have you gone in the remote? Because then we might have to correct it directly and give a firm aversive for that behavior to kids. Okay. If that's the case, I'd most likely push kids towards the end because since there's been a harsher consequence, I don't want to try to, she'll be under too much stress if you try to put high consequence and kids in the same scenario. Then I'd probably take a tangent and say, let's do some recall stuff for a couple of weeks, let that resolve itself, and then come back and visit the kid thing again. Okay. You can always, of course, purchase more classes. And this is just like the bare bones of what you're needing, of what you need. Okay. There's obviously more stuff that we can teach. If you want to go hiking with her, or you take her to restaurant patios, or to take her to restaurant patios and have her at your feet and not moving, you can get that level of control. That just takes more time. Okay. So if you wanted more, so 6 would be the bare minimum. 9-week, we could get, the leash walking, the kid stuff, the off leash recall, and then duration work, which is lay down, don't move for 2 to 3 hours or however long you need. And then my 12-week program is all the obedience stuff and the behavioral stuff, but we push to off-leash reliability for everything. Okay. So recall always has to be off-leash reliable because then it's pointless. Everything else is optional, right? Okay. The 12-week program is like for those that go hiking, they go to the dog park, they go to restaurant patios, the dog is with them all the time, right? And both on and off leash settings that they need a higher level of control. My 9-week program is the more so we go to the dog park and we like to go to restaurant patios, but we really don't go hiking. We don't need off-leash heel or anything like that. And then the 6-week is like we walk our dog on a leash, we go to the dog park, and maybe we have a minor behavior issue or two that we want to address. Okay. Questions so far?
Not really.
No, this is.
Do we?
Go ahead, Corey.
Do we buy the e-collar through you?
You can get it through Amazon. How much does Dinah weigh?
30 to 35.
30 to 35.
There.
Okay. I'd suggest you technically have 2 options. One runs about 237 with tax. The other runs about 287 with tax. You want to get the 287 one. Okay. Reason for this is I'm assuming thicker coat, long fur.
Pretty thick, yeah.
Is that the more expensive one has more output to get through help make better contact. The other thing we want to think about is if when Dinah kicks into a state of aggression or reactivity, adrenaline's pumping, the dog's under stress, you want to have power to override the dog's mental state. Yeah. Okay. So all it means is we get more from less in the numbers. Okay.
That makes sense.
And Maria will send you the make and model for everything here in terms of what you'll need to get. You can get on Amazon, 287 with tax, roughly. It's fully waterproof, 3/4 mile range, meant for 70-pound dogs and under. So I don't think we'll have any problems with that. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of cost, and Maria will reiterate this to you, the 6-week is $825. The 9-week is $1175, and the 12-week is $1550. Of course, part of your consultation fee gets credited towards the program.
Okay.
And also, just so you know, we've added 2 complimentary Zoom sessions to the programs. So if you do the 6, you're really getting 8 hours of work, but 6 are up to 6 are in person, 2 are via Zoom. Okay. And the Zoom sessions are more so just for like any questions you may have. Instead of spending a lot of time in person talking over these questions, we can do that over the Zoom, and we can use the in-person sessions to do all the necessary work.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you ever have any of the sessions where you would come to the house for any specific reason, or is it just entirely in the park?
So I used to. That's actually how I started my business.
Okay.
But because of COVID, my facility here in Logan Square is super slow. So
we used to be in Logan Square. Where are you?
we're right by the AMC Theater. It's across the street by Western.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's amazing. We lived on Palmer Square Park before we moved here to Oak Park.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, so you guys are out west.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason why we've been doing Oz Park, one is because it's super busy, but one with COVID, I do get clients that are how do you say, high risk, you know. So then I'm going in and out people's homes, you know, and I don't want to obviously contract it or give it to anybody. Sure. Plus, if I get sick, my business kind of just I am the business.
Yeah.
So, but it's what we can do if you're coming from Oak Park is we can meet you at Independence, which is a bit more west, a little bit closer your way. The only drawback is Independence is not as busy as Oz Park. There's also not very much shade there, so if it's a really hot day, we're going to be out in the sun for the most part. Whereas Oz Park, like I said, it's very highly trafficked. Lots of kids, lots of dogs, plenty of shade to be working under, so it's nice and cool. But you know, we can at least do that for you, where we can meet you more west at Independence Park.
What about Palmer Square?
Where is Palmer Square?
So it's between Sacramento and Kedzie.
Oh, sure.
And south of.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I just walked through there earlier.
It's on the boulevard, little, you know.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I just walked through. Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Okay. So, because Oz Park is more so closer to the lakefront, so you're going to be making quite a trek. Even from us to there, it's like 15 minutes. So at least cut off 15 minutes off your travel time. But then, you know, in terms of busyness, I'm not sure quite how busy it is. There shouldn't be any issue. Okay, I know the concern is the neighborhood and stuff. If needed, I just started opening up one of my trainers to doing in-homes now, or at least traveling out for certain cases, because he's, developed a very good skill set, but now he's learning, how do I teach the owner? Okay, I think your case in the beginning might be too advanced for him, but if anything, if it's like, hey, you know, things are going great, but could you just have someone come to us and like show us how do we apply stuff? Then I can send him along, because most of them are done, and then we can do that for you. Okay.
Nice. Yeah. What types of like days of the week and times and things like that are available? Corey's working full time. I am currently furloughed, but hopefully that will end in the next few weeks.
Sure. So. Maria would be able to better answer that question.
Oh, okay.
I've learned not to talk about my calendar. So, yeah, but we're gradually, because they used to be only Saturday and Sunday, because I went from 30 to 40 clients to 0. Okay. And then we opened up Saturday filled up, then we opened up to Sunday, then Friday, and then now it's Monday. So we're gradually rebuilding our base, but having people travel to us allows us to see more people within the day.
Sure.
You know, which is why we also added in the complimentary Zoom sessions to give the value back. So I don't think we're going to have any issue here. As long as you have the appropriate caller. Again, we can only take you as far as you're willing to go. So if we tell you, hey, she needs 85, but you only go to 35, like, you're not going to get anywhere. Okay.
You know, I think we're, I don't want to speak for Corey, but I feel like I'm at least at the point where, like, I know I don't know what to do and my responses are wrong. And I feel very comfortable with everything you've told us about how this e-collar works. It's not an electric shock and then all that kind of stuff. I understand the concept of it. So
you'd like
yeah,
to,
I feel very calm and secure with the idea that there's something we can do. So it's
yes. And
good.
just so you know, actually, so this is a very common question is, when does the e-collar go away? Okay. In my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay. This has nothing to do with the training methods. This has nothing to do with my skills or how much time you put into it. But as an example, do you guys drive?
Yeah. Sure.
Yep. Do you go on the expressway?
Yep.
Do you go to the speed limit?
Nope.
Okay.
It's 80 on the Eisenhower, right? That's what I was doing yesterday. Like that.
Most people don't, because there's no cops around.
Yeah.
Right. But if you see a squad car, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know, slow down, right? Yeah. So the e-collars, I call it a cop on a collar. It's the authority figure, right? So when you need it, so worst case scenario is you take her out for walks, she's wearing the collar. It's not that you're always using it. It's just that it's present. Okay. Yeah. So it's just, you know, it is what it is. Like, you know, people it's opportunistic behavior. People do it. All animals do it. Like, you know, it's fine. So just let you know that. And I would suggest, if you'd like to get a feel of what things would look like, watch my video. I just put it up. I think it just uploaded like 20 minutes ago. Or not 20 minutes, like an hour ago. The dog's name is Luna. Okay. If you go to my YouTube channel, it should be one of the most recent ones that posted up. Otherwise, just search Luna on my channel, and you'll see the consultation, and then you'd see the first lesson, which we just had yesterday. That's the dog that scratched me up. Very similar to your case. Okay. It'll help if you like to kind of see how it would work. That's why it's uncut. I post all my stuff unedited, uncut, so that people. I'm very transparent. Like, again, e-collar has a bad name, and I'm like, here it is. Like, you know, it's all in your head or it's all in people's heads because of what they think the tool is. Yeah. Okay. So that'll help give you a nice visual. Otherwise, Marie will get in contact with you. Yeah. And then she'll reiterate everything. And then it's really first come, first serve. We've had an influx of consultations coming through. So. Yeah, I bet. Yeah. A lot of adoptions during this, but. Yeah. A lot of dogs are issues because of COVID. So. Yeah. Would you like to meet Dinah real quick? Yeah, sure. I can go get her. Okay, let me grab her.
Yeah, it's really Come here. I mean, I had the same idea about a shock collar until I saw that presentation, and just really agree with the philosophy that it's like tapping the dog on the shoulder to get their attention.
Yeah. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, here she is, wanting to say hi. She's likes to give hugs and all of this. Here, turn toward the camera. There we are.
Oh yeah. And you guys play fetch with her?
Yeah. Frisbee a lot. It's her favorite.
When you throw the ball, does she go directly for it or does she go around it?
Directly for the ball. So her we know her parentage. She came from a breeder that had an oops litter between the border and the Aussie. And so we met her dad the day we went out to visit the litter, who is a border collie. And he is like a nationally ranked fly ball champion. So she seems to have gotten a lot of her, like, she likes to run things down. Sure. She is okay to catch if it's thrown at her, but she really likes to run things down. Sure. Don't you, sweet girl. And she just, one other thing I was going to mention too, when you asked anything about Elsa Batter, her base nature is so sweet. And that's why I think I have so much faith that she can, you know, be brought around, because like she's clearly a love. You can tell.
It's here, yeah. Yeah, my stepdad had 6 border collies, and he did work with them, so I'm familiar.
Yeah.
She'll go out around a little, not as much as our other one would really like go. Could go way out and around and come back on balls when she fetched.
Yeah. I'm not too well versed in the herding breed world, but I remember my stepdad telling me, if you see a dog do that, it's usually from a herding instinct because they come around things. I think there's one breed of dog that does a direct approach that's a herding breed. But yeah, I was just curious. Okay. Anything else before I go?
Not for me.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure meeting everybody. If you have any other
Yep,
questions,
nice to meet
feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we'll be in touch. Okay.
Okay,
Yep, thank
sounds
you very
great.
much.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.